ask every aspiring author I talk to the same question. How do you want to publish? Traditionally, do you want to self-publish or do you want to go for a hybrid? Now, I have talked about the differences between these in previous videos, previous blog posts, but what I want to get at today is that one of the most common answers I hear has a huge misconception baked right in. People will say to me, I want to publish traditionally because I don't want to do the marketing. Now, I get this because when you are going into authorship for the very first time, you don't even know what the book is going to be like, right? You don't know the process. You have never experienced this before. And if you are not somebody who already owns a business or already is in this marketing world, it is just one intimidating factor too many. So today I want to talk about why you can do your own marketing, I promise, even if you are a newbie, and why it is a mistake to trust that your publisher, whether hybrid or traditional, is going to handle all of the promotion you need. Stay tuned. You are not going to want to miss this one. If you have been waiting for a sign that it's time to start your book, this is it. From now until the end of March 2024, every new client who signs on with Page and Podium will be grandfathered in to the 2023 price structure. That is a 20% savings off of our rates going forward. You won't want to miss this. Head over to pageandpodium.com/contact to apply. I can't wait to hear about your book. So we are talking today about the number one biggest misconception that I hear all the time about traditional publishers, and that is the idea that if you go with a traditional publisher, that they are going to do all of the marketing, all of the promotion. You will not have to handle any of that. Now, again, I understand where this comes from. It is not that people are lazy. It is not that people, don't think they can figure it out. I think it just is to do with, it just feels so overwhelming. How do you even think about when what we see in movies, what we see in TV, what we see in media coverage, we see people on Oprah, we see people speaking to these huge crowds of hundreds of thousands of people. And I think a lot of times first-time authors feel like if that isn't what's happening with their book, then they have failed. It's a huge misconception, and it's one that I want to nip in the bud right now. So if you haven't watched my previous videos or read the blog post that goes with them about the differences between traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, and self-publishing, it might be good to pause, head over, watch one of those, read that blog post, because it does help to know the difference between the types of publishers. And you are going to get different things from those publishers. So I don't want to go into all of that now. We've covered that in the past. But what I do want to do is I want to talk about how the marketing and promotion works when you're talking about really any kind of publishing. The first thing I want to do is we want to separate out marketing from promotion. And I know it feels a little bit like that splitting hairs, like they can't be that different, but they really are. And in the book industry, it's really helpful to keep them separate. So when we talk about marketing, what we're talking about is making sure that your book is available for the people who want to buy it when and where they want to buy it. So this is things like at the very most basic level, if you were self-publishing, for example, you would want to make sure that your book was on Amazon. You would want to make sure that it was on barnesandnoble.com. You might be interested in getting it on iTunes or some of these other online retailers. That is marketing because you are getting it in front of a market. Even though, Amazon, that seems assumed, but truly, if we think about how do people buy books today, we know that Amazon is on track to have 80% of the book market by the end of the next year. It wouldn't make sense to have your book not be on Amazon, right? So even if you're going to sell it on your personal website, most people are going to put it on Amazon. That's part of marketing. Now that is a super basic level, right? There are way more things that we can do besides that. For example, we can make sure that local bookstores or bookstores in areas that are going to be excited about your book, make sure that local bookstores carry it. That is something that is harder to do as a self-published author, but if you are publishing hybrid or traditional, your publisher should be doing that for you so that, again, it is in the place where people are going to buy it when they want to buy it. Your publisher also should do things depending on what your book is, who it's going to appeal to. getting it into library journals, library catalogs, bookstore catalogs, that kind of thing, so that, again, the book is available. When we talk about marketing, we might also include things like the press promoting your book on their social media channels, again, making sure it is in front of the people that need to see it, and you, the author, also presumably will be putting things about the book on your social media channels where we are just sharing the book is available. Here it is. Here's where you can find it. Here's what we want you to do. Buy the book, read it, leave a review, right? So this is all marketing stuff. It's not really personal and it's not super active, right? When we're doing marketing, these are things that are pretty stable. We're going to kind of just keep doing the same consistent thing over and over again. And the idea is to get the project in front of the right eyeballs. Okay, so that's marketing. The second piece of this is promotion. And the reason I want to separate them out is that usually the press is going to do the marketing piece, but you will need to do the promotion piece with the support, ideally, of the press. So when we talk about promotion, we're talking about things that are getting you into conversation with your readers. So this is a lot of times the stuff that we see being really intimidating on in movies and TV. So this might be things like public speaking. That can be, huge crowds. Or it might be that you start out with something that's a little bit smaller. Maybe you would appear on a local radio show, depending on where you are in the world. You might go to a conference that is your particular area of expertise, maybe one where you already know some people. You could think about if there are state level organizations that might be interested. So we can go all the way from even something as small as your church or your local Rotary Club, all the way up to, say, Oprah, right? But all of these things where you are there speaking directly to the people that you want to build a relationship with through your book, that is promotion. And the reason in this particular video that I want to separate those two ideas out is, I think you can probably see, the press cannot do promotion for you. They literally cannot. I want to say that one more time. Your publisher cannot do the promotional aspect for you. Now, can they help? Can they make introductions for you? Can they do they have a marketing person who can kind of help coach you through some of these things? Often, yes, we do. We do that. We can help authors figure out strategy. In fact, we do that. In addition to the marketing that we are doing, we want to make sure that our authors are set up to really go after their promotion. But there is no world with our press or any where you, an average author, are going to be able to just turn over all marketing and promotion to the press and have that be enough. It just won't be. And I want to illustrate why that really, really matters, because it does. And I want to do that by bringing in a couple of books where I bought the book because of the author's promotion, because I think this is so useful to kind of see how this works. So the first of these books is by an author I really admire and respect, Sarah Smarsh, and the book is called Heartland. So Sarah Smarsh is from Wichita, or outside of Wichita, and I'm from right in the middle of Kansas. I live outside Kansas City now, but I'm from right in the middle of Kansas. I went to college in Wichita, so I really connect with with where Sarah Smarsh is from. But how did I know where she was from? How did I know any of this background before I bought her book? The answer is her promotion. So one of the things that Sarah Smarsh had been doing leading up to even before the book was launched, although the book was probably done at this point, was that she was placing a lot of guest posts in different journalism outlets. So she had some kind of more local stuff. She had some stuff, I think, in the Kansas City Star and the Wichita Eagle. But then she also was placing things in major national magazines, major national newspapers. She built up to that, right? She did not come out the gate as a journalist being able to, just call up the New York Times and get placed in there. And she was with a major traditional publisher, so she also has that sway to be able to go up the ranks a little more quickly and more quickly access some of those techniques and strategies. But the point I'm making here is that I met Sarah Smarsh not through her book, but through her promotional strategies. She was building a national level reputation, again, not through the book, but through the promotional things she was doing. So in her case, this was guest essays, guest articles, where she was sharing pieces of her story and she was helping readers get to know who she was. I was reading those because I am absolutely her target reader, right? I am from the Midwest. I grew up working class. That her book is about kind of growing up working class and moving through the politics of what that might mean. I was her target reader. And by doing these promotional strategies, she got not her book, but herself in front of me. That's the difference between marketing and promotion, right? The press can get the book in front of me. Maybe I would have bought it, I don't know. Only Sarah Smarsh can get Sarah Smarsh in front of me. So we're building relationships with promotion, right? I got to know her, and so I wanted to make sure that I took that extra step and bought her book and learned more about her. And I'll tell you what, I also bought her Dolly Parton book. She is putting out new books, and I have such a connection with her. I've never met her, but I have such a connection with her that I'm always going to buy her stuff. And that is a result of promotion, not marketing, right? I actually cannot tell you off the top who her publisher was. Simon & Schuster, maybe? I'm not sure. But I know Sarah Smarsh. And that is the thing that you can do as an author that your press cannot do. Okay, I want to give you another example as well, just to sort of build this out a little bit in case you're not somebody that really connects with that particular angle. So the second book I want to share is called Worth Every Penny, and it's by Erin Verbeck and Sarah Petty. Got all the Sarahs today. So the reason I wanted to share this book is that while this book does have stories from Sarah Petty's life and her experience in business, she's a photographer, also it is pretty much a straight up business book. Throughout, she's giving tips and tricks and frameworks and philosophies and mindsets to think about running a business as a boutique business. Now, I want to tell you how this book got in front of me because it was not the publisher. She worked with an indie publisher here, and they are excellent. I'm sure that they did amazing marketing things. But the way I learned about Sarah Petty's book was that I learned about Sarah Petty because she has a podcast. Now, her podcast is only for photographers, technically, but it is a women-centric podcast. It is values-based. And the way that she talked about business just really connected with me. It's about care, making sure that your clients get everything they need, plus things they didn't even know they needed, making sure that just all your branding is really tight and clear. I really resonated with her message on the podcast. So when her book dropped and they were doing a lot of promotion, again, on the podcast, it wasn't her press doing it. She was doing it on the podcast. I had to buy it, right? So I think I was probably on a walk. I often listen to podcasts on walks. And I think I probably just pulled up Amazon right there, marketing, right? And bought the book. So that is a combined effort. The press had to make sure that was available lots of places, but it's really the author promotion that is what drove me to buy that book. I felt like I knew Sarah Petty. I trusted that if she was saying that she was proud of her book, that it was going to be really good because I find her podcast valuable. And I was really happy to take action because, again, it's personal, right? I feel like I have a personal relationship with her. So I want to support her by buying her book, and I know it's going to be valuable for me. So thinking again about kind of this difference between marketing and publicity, I hope that that's a little bit more clear, that I'm not arguing that your press shouldn't do anything. In fact, I think publishers should do a lot. I think publishers should be making sure that your book is in all of the major retailers where people might want to buy it. Your publisher can do things like getting you trade reviews, working with influencers. Those are things that your press can do to make sure that your book is out there. But what I am saying is that you, the author, are going to have so much more success and such just a better time of it if you can brace yourself from the very beginning of writing that book in thinking about what kinds of promotional activities you might like to do. And that really brings me to my next point, which is where this confusion comes from. Because I think it's really illuminating to think about why some of these misconceptions exist and why they don't exist. So I said earlier, and I want to reiterate it, my perception and my read in speaking with so many aspiring authors, I do not believe that any of these authors are at all lazy or they just don't want to do the work, they don't want to pull their weight. I don't believe that at all. I think authors want to do what they need to do. What I think it is that we get so overwhelmed with all of the choices. And since most of us only experience marketing and promotion as people who are being marketed to and promoted to, we do not have a really clear sense of how to think about these concepts. So I want to give you kind of one major misconception in this pathway, and then I want to talk to you about how you can shift your mindset and think about it a little bit differently. Okay, so usually when I start these conversations with authors, often it may be in that first call, but often it's a little bit later in our process of working together. There's always a point where kind of a little bit of frustration will come up and people will say something like, what's the best way to promote a book? Now, what I hear when people ask me this is, what is the right answer? And here's the thing that I want you to know about all marketing and all promotion, whether it's done by the press, whether it's done by you, whoever is doing it, there is never going to be one right answer. And there are a few reasons for this that I want to walk through because I think it's going to help you reframe before we get into, I do have some solutions for you, by the way. But before that, I really want to make sure that as you're going into this process, you are thinking about things in a way that's going to serve you, instead of a way that is really going to just make you feel kind of defeated all the time, which is how a lot of book authors feel if they don't have support at this point. Okay, so I've got 3 things that I want you to make sure you go through as you're thinking about moving forward in your promotion strategy. The first thing is, all marketing is trial and error. I'll say it again. All marketing is trial and error. Unfortunately, no one can just tell you how to market or how to promote, and they just know and it just works forever and always. And I'm exaggerating that. I'm making that non-nuanced, and I'm joking around a little bit, right? But I can tell you that is something that I experienced a long time ago when I was first dipping my toe into this world of marketing and promotion, is you just want somebody to tell you the right answer. There's not a right answer. So the 3 things I want you to do as you're thinking through your strategy. 1, think about trial and error. Every marketing strategy, you're going to have to just figure out what you think is right based on your book, based on the people you're trying to reach, and then you just have to try it. Now, I would suggest, setting a time period that you're going to try it so that you can continue to evaluate, and that is my second tip. So let's say, you have been trying just still images or just graphics on social media. You've tried that for a couple months. You're really not getting any movement. Maybe you've got like your friends and family are following you on Instagram or whatever, but you're not really getting any new people. It's not doing what you want it to do, right? Oh, okay. So then at that point, we want to step back. We want to look at it. We want to get all the data. We want to really look and see, how many people have I reached? Am I just reaching people that I already know? Do I know that this is not working? Or am I just kind of in my head talking myself out of doing the strategy and being visible? If the answer is, this is really not working, I gave it an honest try, I really pushed for it, no results. Okay, then we need to regroup, right? And that's the trial and error thing. So I know a lot of times it feels panicky, like, oh my gosh, but I've been doing this for 2 months. Yes, but your book is a long game. So if at that point you feel like whatever strategy we're using, we're going to switch, then maybe we'll try something different. So maybe we want to see if maybe TikTok's where our folks are. That's going to require some messaging, right? So we're going to have to try some different messages, see what people respond to, get a sense of whether that's going to work. A little bit down the line, we can reevaluate, decide if we think that this is going the way we want it to. If it is, we can increase or get help or, dial in, whatever it might be. But if we're not watching for how our behavior, how our actions are translating into sales or not, then we're not going to be able to know whether this particular promotional or marketing strategy is working for us. That's pretty important, right? Because the tendency often is to just say, oh, it doesn't work, I give up. You got to keep at it and you've got to keep evaluating it. So trial and error, statistical or, numbers evaluation, make sure that we're tracking what we're doing to see whether it's leading to the result we want of buying our books. And then the third thing I want to say is you've got to make sure that as you're trying and erroring, that you are also making sure that you're not pulling out too quickly. So Mike Michalowicz, who you might be familiar, he has a lot of books. They're really, really good. Check out all of them. But one of the things that he says that really resonates with me is that he talks about how you need to have at least 100 people see that marketing or promotion strategy before you can evaluate whether it worked or not. So he will talk about, for example, if you wanted to send out flyers in the mail, you need to make sure that you send out 100 flyers, let it play through its course before you decide, that's not working. And the reason for that is that so many of us will bail way too early, right? We'll send out 5, or, this happens with cold, if you were doing cold email for your business or whatever, this happens really commonly, right? I just hate doing this. I'm not going to do it anymore. Make sure you've got in front of 100 people. So I will tell you what, in Mike Michalowicz's case, he has several books. One of the things that he does that I would have said is not going to work, right, is he will do reviews of other authors' books who are in a similar niche to his, so that, and he does video reviews, so that when people watch his video review, he has his book right behind him. So that and this is the thing, so that people see that book back there, and since it's on books that are similar to his, then this is his target reader, right? So what he has found, first he found that if he did these video reviews on other authors' books and he had the book behind him, he found that was moving copies of his book. Cool. He would not have known that if he was not doing one main strategy and tracking the progress. Well, then, once he had done that, then he did a little experiment where he switched the book to the other side to see whether that would increase, and it did. So it's over here. He has this whole, the book is called Get Different, where he talks about all of this stuff. It's really great. But he goes down to even buying a new bookshelf that is more interesting looking so that he can display his book in a way that's going to grab people's attention on these video reviews of other authors' books. Truly, it's so wild that it's brilliant, which is the argument, truly, of that book, right? But I bring this up because if he had just, tried a couple of those and just been like, I don't know, this feels so weird. I think that's probably what I would have done, frankly. He would never be able to dial in his strategy in the way that he has. And he also acknowledges in that book that strategy is not going to work forever, right? At some point, other people are going to co-opt it. It's just going to kind of get to be the norm. Maybe video reviews will go down in popularity. All kinds of things can happen. But what he's doing is trying a strategy, seeing how it goes by watching the statistics, watching whether the sales are going up or down or staying the same, and then giving it an ample amount of time to make sure that strategy has been actually tested and that he's not just bailing. I've kind of gotten at this a little bit in the video, but I want to say it very clearly. A lot of times what I see first-time authors do is have such an intense anxiety about the visibility that they will bail way, way too early on any promotional strategy. They will send out a couple of queries to see, if they can do a blog, They'll send out a couple of queries to see if they can do a podcast interview, for example, and then they won't get the results that they want. And so then they feel kind of embarrassed, which I get that. And then they stop sending out the queries. Well, we don't know. Maybe the podcast guesting strategy would have been great. And truly, all you maybe needed was 1 or 2 to get the ball rolling so that other podcast hosts could see how great you are on their podcast, right? So we've got to really make sure that we are giving our strategy enough time and enough real focus and energy to be sure that it is not working. Not that we just kind of feel icky or embarrassed and we don't want to keep going. Okay, so that brings me to the last point that I want to add in here, which is that I want to give you some practical advice on how to shape up this promotion strategy. And keeping in mind that if you are self-publishing, you've got to do the marketing piece too. But for those that are wanting to work with a traditional publisher, here's how you might think about what your strategy will be. So the first thing you've got to do is sit with yourself and really, truly, honestly evaluate the resources that you have to dedicate to moving this book. There are 2 categories, time and money. Time is money, of course, and money is time. But what we're going to have to do is think about how much time and how much money we are willing to put into this promotion so that we can be really, really honest about the results that we're going to expect. Okay, so you might have a little time and a lot of money, or a little money and a lot of time. I'm going to just break it into two groups. You'll get the idea. You can kind of make your own customized approach to this. So let's say first that you have way more time. So you are going to want to put in some time, and you are willing to put in that time and reserve that time from now through the life of the book. Well, if you have more time than money, you might want to think about things like going live maybe once a week and giving some advice that relates to your book. We work with a lot of people who do memoir, so that advice then may be things that are related to the lessons you learned through your memoir. You are probably going to have some overlap with the content of the book and some ideas that don't overlap, right? Especially because, again, this is not like a 4-week thing. We're thinking about things that we can be consistent about for the entire life of the book. So if we're going to do it through sweat equity, we've got to make sure we're going to be able to be consistent. So one of those ways, again, we can go live, we can talk about the topics, the pieces of advice that we have, whether that is life advice from a memoir, business advice from a business book, leadership advice from a leadership book, whatever it may be. We're going to think about being visible by going live, either in Reels or TikTok or whatever that might be. Okay, if you have a lot of time, another idea that has worked for many, many, many authors is starting either a podcast or like a video show on YouTube, depending on if you like to be on camera, or if you're okay being on camera. Video can be really great for circulation. If you're not going to want to be on camera, if you're not going to want to fix your hair and do your makeup, you can just do an audio only podcast. Now, you can do these for extremely cheap or free. Our library here in town has a podcast recording studio that you can just book the time. It's free. So there are ways to do this without spending money. But again, it's got to be that you are willing to put the time in for the entire life of the book. So maybe you decide, you know what, I think I want to do a podcast. I cannot do it every week. That sounds so overwhelming, but I think I could do it every month. So every year you're going to record 12 episodes. That is going to help people kind of get to know you, think about who you are. It's going to put you on the map. If someone Googles your name, they might be able to listen to your podcast first. That is a great way to build up people's interest in who you are, just like what happened when I was talking about Sarah Petty earlier, right? I listened to her podcast. I got to know her. So now whenever she has a book, or really any offer, I'm interested in that, right? I feel like I know her. So if you have the time, that is one thing that you can do to build up. And then a third suggestion that I have, if it would be more comfortable for you, if you're, a really relational person, you want to see the people you're talking to, totally get that. That might be a case where you are going to think about, who can I go talk to? What groups? Can you make a commitment to try to speak to one book club a month? Or, maybe it's not a book club, maybe it's a church group, depending on the topic. Maybe it's a Chamber of Commerce group. Can you once a month try to book yourself a time to build relationships with the readers that you want to reach? This is scary. A lot of times people really feel so intimidated. What they'll tell me is that they feel like they're going to embarrass themselves, right? They feel like they're going to reach out to these groups. The group's going to be like, who are you? Why are you contacting us? That's not going to happen. But I get it. That's what it seems like is going to happen in our mind, right? So then as a result, we pull back, we don't do it. But getting in front of these groups one-on-one not only is going to get people to build relationships so they're willing to buy your book, it also is really going to snowball. You are going to start to feel more comfortable. You're going to have more people who know that you can speak in front of groups because they're going to see you speak in front of groups, which means those first few bookings might be hard, but then you're going to start to get momentum. You're going to start to have references. You may have a media kit eventually, or a reel where you can show what you're like in front of an audience. You can join a speakers bureau. You can see that as you start working on this, it gets a little bit easier and it gets infinitely more effective. And that is how you know it's working. Okay, so those are all things that you can do really for free. You may decide you want to record at home and you invest in a microphone, but for the most part, there are a lot of things you can do for free. It is just going to require that you dedicate the time if you don't want to dedicate the money. Okay, now let's say that you really short on time, but you do have money that you're willing to invest. I do have some bad news, which is that I don't really know of any promotional strategies where you don't need any time, but we certainly can ease some of the burden of the time if you are willing to and you have the money to invest. So the main way that this has happened historically in the book industry is that authors will hire a publicist. Now, a lot of times people think that if you get a traditional book deal, they will hire a publicist for you. And that can be the case. There are presses that will do that. We literally are in the process of that right now. But you should expect that you as the author are going to be the person that is bringing that publicist on. You are the person that is covering that cost. So you want to be prepared. Most publicists are going to expect a minimum of a 3-month commitment, and they are going to usually be $15,000, $18,000, $20,000, $25,000. It is a pretty big investment to get yourself a publicist. Now, that investment can have a pretty major ROI, particularly if you are benefiting from your book in other ways besides just straight up sales. You can make your money back, especially, again, if you're a business owner, if you're a public speaker who is getting paid speaking gigs, because a publicist is going to be able to get you tons of street cred just by pitching you for things that are in their network that are going to be probably a little higher end than you're going to be able to do by yourself, particularly if you are a first-time author, you're not super visible at this point. But you do need to make sure that you do have the money set aside. And again, they are going to do things like pitch you for media appearances, pitch you for interviews. So you are going to need to be available to do that work. But a publicist is a super effective way to go about getting out there, getting in front of new people. A slightly step down is that you can also hire just a person that will only do one specialized type of work for you. So there are people who will pitch you for guest posts. There are people who will pitch you for podcast interviews. These can be it's a huge range of expenses, but these can be much, much more affordable depending on who you decide to work with, so that you can maybe even think about this as something that it's an ongoing expense you will always expect to have. But again, you are building up all of this credibility so that you should start to see, the chart go upward and then start to go upward even faster, and you should start to see some exponential growth eventually. Now, if you are somebody who really would just rather not be speaking in front of a camera or even speaking into a microphone, first of all, let me say I highly, highly recommend that you do some mindset and skill work so that you get more comfortable. You can hire a speaking coach. There are lots of coaches that will work with you on the mindset and the skills that you need to make sure that you are able to appear in public and able to appear in the media. But another thing that you can do in the meantime is you can hire a social media manager. Now, stay with me for a second, because you do not want somebody who is just going to just post images and not do any strategy behind it. You need an actual strategist here. Okay, so hear me when I say that. You are not just looking for someone to make Canva graphics for you and post them on your Facebook. That is not going to do anything for your growth. You need a growth-oriented social media strategist. So the bad news is that is probably not your 15-year-old nephew, right? Your 15-year-old nephew might be able to help you execute on some of the ideas that your social media strategist has, but you are going to need somebody who knows how to do things like build your audience up, right? So that you're not just talking to the same people over and over. So that would be another way that then you can get a little bit faster momentum if you have that money to spend, and you can really shortcut in some of the trial and error. There's going to be some trial and error still, but if you have an experienced social media strategist, they should be able to at least tell you, I don't know if that strategy is going to do it, or, that's interesting, I think that could work. So that will save you a little time in trying to get those results. So whether you do the time investment or the money investment, most likely you're going to do a little bit of both. Wherever that balance falls for you, the main thing that I want you to keep in mind is that it is going to take time. Now, I know in the entrepreneurial and small business community, we talk about this a lot, but it doesn't necessarily extend to book authors. So I want to share with you a statistic. Most small businesses take 3 to 5 years before they turn a profit. The reason that I'm sharing with you on this book video podcast is that book authorship is also starting a business. When you publish a book, you are starting a business. I want you to be profitable right away, and you can be, and I have seen that happen. But it is going to take some buildup on the front end to make sure that you have all of your promotion and marketing in place. Some of it might come from your publisher, or maybe you're doing it all on your own. But the big thing is you got to be patient. So if we are, 6 months in and you saw, as many people do, kind of the first surge of sales at the beginning, and then it's kind of leveled off a little bit, use that not as a reason to stop, not as a reason to give up, but as data. Remember, we are doing trial and error. We can look at those results and say, that's not what I want. Let me think about how I need to move forward. What can I change? What can I tweak? And try that experiment again. It is going to take a lot of patience. It is going to take your time and your energy investment. But the good news is none of these things are only selling books. All of these tactics are also allowing you to do additional income generating activities, things like paid speaking gigs, things like higher rates for your consultancy jobs, if that's something you do, or coaching clients, whatever it is that if you have a small business that does. And you can start to leverage this then too into bulk sales and sponsored sales so that your book sales also are going to increase more. The thing that you got to remember though, is it is always going to be trial and error. There is no one right or one correct way to market any single book, let alone books in general. The only way is to get in there, get your hands dirty, put the time and or the money into building up your strategies so that they can get more and more and more successful and get that book into the hands of the people who need it. Okay, I know you're going to be great. I know it is really challenging to come up with all of the self-confidence that it takes to be really visible, but I know you can do it. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help support you. I would love to hear from you, hear about the book you're working on or the book you have been dreaming of. So stay tuned. We have a couple of special offers that are coming right now down the pipeline. You will not want to miss these. I'll talk to you soon. Happy writing. Your book deserves the New York treatment. From writing support to editing to design, layout, publication, and marketing and promotion, Page and Podium has always been dedicated to bringing you the best-in-class support staff to make sure that your book reaches all of the amazing heights you know it can. In 2024, to deliver that level of amazing service, we are raising our prices. But you still have time to lock in your book at the 2023 prices if you act now. From now until the end of March 2024, any new client who signs their contract and pays their deposit will be grandfathered in at our 2023 rates, 20% lower than what we'll be moving to in 2024. You got to act now. Head over to pageandpodium.com/contact to fill out your application. I'd be so excited to talk with you about your book and get you on the path to publishing that New York bestseller.